The AAC Report is brought to you by Blake Blahut of Realty One Group. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, call Blake Blahut anytime at 407-748-0484. Welcome to the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for joining me. We continue our team-by-team previews of the American. Coming up shortly, we will hear from J.P. Gooderham from FearTheWave.com to look at the Tulane Green Wave for 2019, as well as Dekota Gregory from the Tulsa World newspaper. He'll look at the Golden Hurricanes prospect for the upcoming season. But first, we now take you to Memphis as Frank Murtaugh he's the managing editor of Memphis Magazine, sports writer for the Memphis Flyer. He's going to give us a preview of the Tigers for the 2019 season. Frank, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeff.
Well, let's look. Yeah, you're welcome. So, look at it this way. Memphis has been on the doorstep of being the AAC champion by just such the narrowest of margins the last 2 seasons. You could probably do a whole hour on the last 3 games with UCF overall. But the good news is Memphis is definitely going to be a contender going into this season.
Well, Jeff, it looks like the Tigers have a step ahead of the rest coming out of the gate just by not having UCF on their schedule. This is a program that's lost 9 games the last 2 years, and in 4 of them, virtually half, have been to the Golden Knights. So just erasing UCF from the schedule, I think, puts the Tigers in a position where, if you want to call it an inside track toward maybe a rematch, which would get them back on the schedule, that may be one of those intangibles that Mike Norvell has in his hip pocket as the season gets going.
Well, the Knights and Tigers have certainly delighted football fans quite a bit over the last couple of seasons. So let's talk about the Tigers starting on offense. They're in good shape at the quarterback position. Brady White came in from Arizona State. Had a very fine season last year, 63% completion rate, over 3,200 yards, 26 touchdowns to only 9 picks. Got to be excited about that to see what this season brings from him.
Yeah, the Tiger offense under Norvell has been remarkable, Jeff. They scored 43 points a game last year, which was 6th in the country. And somehow the Memphis program has gotten to a point where they can lose an All-American running back and it not really feel like a big deal. Darrell Henderson's now cashing checks with the Los Angeles Rams, but you've got a young man in Patrick Taylor, now a senior, who ran for almost 1,200 yards last season, 16 touchdowns, a big bruising running back, a little different style than Darrell was, a 6'3" ball carrier. But Taylor behind Brady White, who you mentioned, played well last year, if unevenly. Brady being a veteran now, one of the most cerebral quarterbacks I've ever been around. I got to believe Brady will make some strides this year. And, with Patrick Taylor, and I don't know how deep you want me to go with the weapons they have, but DeMonte Coxey, a 1,000-yard receiver. They have 2 terrific tight ends, and Joey Magnifico and Sean Dyke. So a lot of weapons at Norvell's disposal, some turnover on the offensive line, but this team's going to score points. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's interesting. You mentioned, Darrell Henderson was obviously a top-notch running back. Tony Pollard was a great all-around player as well. And to think that the next guy up is already brushed for over 1,000 yards while those guys were there is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing. Look at 2 years ago, Anthony Miller set all kinds of receiving records, and he was a first-team AP All-American. He's now a Chicago Bear, but as I mentioned, DeMonte Coxey steps in and becomes that downfield threat, even with 2,000-yard running backs at Brady White's disposal in the backfield. So it's an abundance of riches. It's the kind of firepower that Memphis has not seen. And the fact that some in the fan base here are growing accustomed to it, I don't know if that's healthy or if that may be overreaching. But while it's this way, those in and around the Mid-South are really going to enjoy it. It turns into a question, Jeff, of whether or not they can keep the opponent from scoring, 43 points a game or 44 points a game, which was sometimes a problem last year. Yeah,
well, it certainly beats the alternative, that's for sure. So, obviously, to get a team that scores a lot of points, you got to have some stoutness in the trenches. Can you talk a little bit about the Tigers' offensive line?
Yeah, there are more questions than answers. Dustin Woodard is moving from guard to center. He's a veteran. He's on the Outland watch list. He's going to be the guy who's making calls for that line. Dylan Parham is the other returning starter. And I asked the guys, media day was last week, Jeff, I asked them about the development of the offensive line, and to a man, the Tiger players are saying that there was progress in the spring. And I'm convinced that no unit on the football field, offense or defense, develops more over the course of a 4-week summer camp than the offensive line. There's so much synergy required. Those 5 men to understand what's going on at the snap of a ball, be it a play call, run, pass, what have you. And so I think that's the biggest X factor right now going in. I know it's the biggest X factor on offense for this Tiger football team, but having the veteran center there, Dustin Woodard, who has more than 30 starts to his credit already, will be invaluable.
Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. As you mentioned, they did have their issues giving up points, 31 points or more 8 times in the last 12 games. But they do bring a lot of their defense back, 10 of the top 12 tacklers. How do you see the defense making progress this year?
It's interesting. They've got a new defensive coordinator. Adam Fuller has arrived from Marshall, and I was able to meet Adam for the first time last week. And I asked him about, what he sees as primary challenge, and he kind of chuckled and said, we got to stop giving up points. And, that's what it boils down to. Fuller also emphasizes, defense as a single unit, as opposed to your defensive line, your linebackers, your secondary, which I haven't seen so much among some of his predecessors, where you've got different emphasis on what your defensive backs are doing versus what your pass rushers are doing. He's talking about the unit as a whole. There's not a lot of movement among the returning players, Jeff, except for Bryce Huff, who is moving up from a linebacker spot to rush off the edge on the defensive line. He had 9.5 sacks last season. And I think Bryce Huff is a name that opposing offensive coordinators will be planning around. They're deep at linebacker. Tim Hart, J.J. Russell, and Austin Hall are 3 names, guys who have made a lot of tackles the last couple of years. And then T.J. Carter anchors the secondary. He's a cornerback, a junior now. He was a freshman all-conference pick a couple of years ago, and he's a dynamic player. But I think Adam Fuller will be the first to tell you, as a unit, that group has to get better. And they've got to be able to win some games if the Tiger offense is held to, say, just 21, 28 points. And that's been hard the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Is he going to change the scheme defensively, you think?
It's an attacking scheme is what I've read and what Adam emphasized to me in the meeting room we had. 4-3 you're looking at, an old-fashioned, Chicago Bears type, 4 up front, 3 behind the line of scrimmage scheme. So that is a little different from the 3-4 we've seen of late. We'll have to see how that translates. College football, regardless of the conference, is a passing game now. So can this group, once again, as a single unit, front to back, slow some of the firepower that they're going to see from the likes of UCF or Houston or Cincinnati? That's going to be the big variable. Yeah,
and that is an incredible statement that you make as you look at the offensive firepower that's in the conference. It's tough for every team's defense day in and day out in the American.
Oh yeah. No, you're the top defense in the AAC will give up 25 points a game. This isn't your father's football. This isn't your father's college football, much less your grandfather's. And the idea is to force field goals when you can. Turnovers are huge. I mean, any coach worth his salt these days is going to say if you can add to your own possessions and subtract from your opponents, it's going to show up on the scoreboard. So that's going to be another factor in evaluating what the Tigers can bring defensively. Is are they able to force turnovers and when possible, keep teams the field goals.
Well, Mike Norvell's in his 4th season, and I think suitors have tried to see if they could poach him away from the Tigers. He's building quite a program there. Can they hold him for the long haul?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. Easier in August, Jeff, when we know he's going to be here for the next 3 or 4 months. Mike Norvell has described what he's building here as a hard-earned culture. I really like that a lot. He, in the players I've spoken to, they emphasize the little things like when you're walking into the training room in April or May, you take your hat off, you take your earrings off. There's a way of behaving, not just between the lines on game day or even at practice, but just a way of behaving as a representative of the Memphis Tiger football program that is a higher standard than it's been generations past. And that has everything to do with Mike Norvell and the men he's hired and the players he's recruited. I'm pondering my preview, Jeff, for the Flyer annual issue in a couple of weeks, and I've considered the idea of eras in college football, and an era at Ohio State or Alabama or USC or Texas is one thing, and it's often measured in decades. But for a program like Memphis that has had so many years of struggle, an era, I think, can be measured by 3 years going on 4. And that's what we have with Mike Norvell, who, with just 5 wins this season, Jeff, he'd move into 5th place on the Tigers' all-time, coaching wins list. So it speaks volumes about, in terms of the relativity, what Norvell has done for Memphis. And, you ask if he's going to be here. Every conversation I've had with him, he has emphasized how much he's relished the Memphis experience from his arrival, from the support he's received from the community, from his colleagues, those he's brought to town with him to support on game days. And I see no reason for that, to be considered less than genuine. And, the coaching carousel, it comes down to dollar figures and major conferences. And if a big conference program pursues Mike Norvell with enough dollars, he's leaving Memphis. But for now, I think he's very happy, and he's going to be building on this, as he describes it, this hard-earned culture.
Well, Frank, I'm asking everybody who's guesting to do a preview of their team to make a pick of who will be the conference champion. Now, you could make the homer call here and have a legitimate pick.
Wow, yeah, that's I'm not so good at picks in August. I prefer to make this pick closer to Thanksgiving. If I were picking any team, I'd probably go with Cincinnati, just because I'm interested in sort of blind to see what UCF has at quarterback in losing Milton. But I think the Tigers will be in the mix. Houston will be in the mix. I'm waffling here, but if I were to pick a team, you put me in the spot, I'll go with the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Well, Frank, you do some great work, and tell the folks where they can sample your work and where they can follow you and whatnot.
Sure, yeah. MemphisFlyer.com is the quickest way to find my coverage of the Tigers. You can read my magazine work at MemphisMagazine.com. And I encourage every last listener you have to do so, and you'll be in touch with how this Norvell era is unfolding.
All right, so Frank Murtaugh, managing editor of Memphis Magazine, sports writer for the Memphis Flyer. Thank you for giving us the preview of Memphis for 2019.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
We will look at Tulane and Tulsa next when the AAC report continues in just a moment. Are you tired of the endless money pit of paying rent? Do you have a home you need to sell for top dollar? Talk to the Hometown Advantage award-winning real estate professional and fellow UCF Knight, Blake Blahut of Realty One Group. Blake has proven to produce results and a smooth process for his clients all across Central Florida. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, talk to Blake Blahut. Visit him at his website, Blake'sOrlandoHomes.com, or contact him anytime at 407-748-0484. Again, Blake'sOrlandoHomes.com and 407-748-0484. Get the hometown advantage by working with Blake. Time now to take a look at the Tulane Green Wave for 2019. JP Gooderham of the FearOfTheWave.com is here. They cover all things Tulane sports. JP, thanks for being back on the program.
Very glad to be here. Thanks, Jeff.
Tulane football had a nice upward trend last season, finishing with a winning record, a Cure Bowl victory here in Orlando. Would imagine there's some good enthusiasm coming into this season.
Yeah, it's kind of unexpected. I mean, obviously Tulane went through a real dark age, really for the most part after 1998. Some people would say after 2002, but anyone who's familiar with the program, we had some really long stretches where Tulane was not in a position to be competitive in a league like the AAC. And, of course, a couple years ago, in comes Willie Fritz out of Georgia Southern. We saw some nice signs that was the 2017 season, when the Green Wave was literally inches away from making a bowl game on the final play of the season against SMU. The refs ruled that it's not a touchdown. Tulane stays home. And I think that gave the 2018 Green Wave a little bit of an under-the-radar status. And then not only that, the Wave had some struggles early in the season. They really didn't have the quarterback situation figured out. In comes Justin McMillan, a transfer from LSU. Tulane finishes the season on a 5-1 run. They win convincingly in the Cure Bowl for the first bowl victory since 2002. So yeah, Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. It's a little weird for me as somebody who's been around the program for a while to see this much optimism, but it's a lot of fun so far, and we're excited for this year.
And also coming with that, with an offense that has continued to improve, they bring in a new offensive coordinator in Will Hall. And there's a lot of excitement there because I know you told me when you were on the podcast before that he's looking to go things very much up-tempo. That's
correct. I mean, a lot of credit to Willie Fritz at being willing to change his philosophy to take that next step. I mean, Coach Fritz has been overwhelmingly straightforward that making a bowl game is not the goal for this program anymore, that we want to be a program as fast as possible that can compete with the Memphises and Houstons in the AAC West. And he feels like bringing in Will Hall is going to be a step there. The up-tempo offense is obviously going to be a big factor. Will Hall himself played quarterback. He really understands the quarterback position. And I think what we'll see is that Tulane is obviously going to be a team that loves to run. We have a lot of really good backs in that backfield. But we're going to see more of a passing attack, and I think a more modernized Tulane offense in comparison to past years.
And, of course, Will Hall comes from Memphis, which obviously has some offensive credentials. So that definitely gives you something to look forward to. How will things go along the offensive line? I believe you had some starters move out this season, correct?
That's correct. I mean, one of the guys I would circle is John LeGlue, who he's currently with the Denver Broncos. And on top of that, I think offensive line has been a real question for Tulane for a really long time. What I will say is that the Wave brought in a couple of grad transfers, which I think is going to help maybe fill in there. Now, there still isn't a lot of depth. I would definitely still put the offensive line as a question mark. But I know that really the conviction of the team is they need to figure out a way to win now, and I think they have the offensive line that can help get them there.
And the running game, you got their top backs returning, so that's definitely a good sign.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely going to be the strength of the team. Of course, Darius Bradwell, he was the Cure Bowl MVP, really stellar all-around player. Corey Dauphine, Texas Tech transfer who got a lot of time last year. He's a guy who really brings the home run speed. Stephen Hutterson is another guy who, he's a smaller kind of undersized back, but a lot of people are expecting him to have a breakout season. But the name that I think I'm most excited about right now is rising sophomore Amari Jones. Jones was a really stellar punt returner and kick returner. Really not just fast, but just a shifty player who can make a lot of good decisions and make something happen. He's getting a lot of rave reviews out of camp, and we're really excited to see what he does.
And the receiving corps gets a boost with Jalen McCluskey coming in from Oklahoma State. That definitely is definitely a good sign for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who's not familiar with Jalen, his dad is on Tulane's staff. He made a decision early in Oklahoma State's season to transfer, so he still retained that year of eligibility. But he's actually, I think, the number 2 in all-time receiving or all-time receptions for Oklahoma State. I mean, he had a really nice career going with them, and to be able to bring him in, and on top of that, to move to a system that more strongly is going to favor the passing game, I think we should be excited about him, as well as Darnell Mooney, who averaged something like 8.2 yards per reception last year. Really terrific player. He's another guy that we definitely need to be excited about having.
Let's look at the defensive side of the ball, and there's a great strength there, particularly getting to the quarterback. Talk about the Tulane defense.
Well, everything's going to go through the defensive line. Phil Steele joined our podcast last week, and he was talking about he has Tulane's defensive line is not just one of the best G5 defensive lines, but top 25 for the country. Patrick Johnson is really kind of the star name that a lot of people are focused on, and for really good reason. He was just monstrous last year, and he's a preseason pick for a lot of magazines for AAC Defensive Player of the Year. But there's a lot of guys that you can look to as part of the defensive line who I think people are excited to see what they can do this year. One player who I could see having a big season at defensive tackle is Jeffrey Johnson, who is a rising sophomore. He's a guy who had a lot of really kind of high major SEC offers, but he had some kind of weird, I forget the details, but some sort of medical question or something and kind of lost touch with some schools. Anyway, Tulane's gain, he came and got some playing time last year. But yeah, all around, I think the defensive line looks great. I think you've got some young defensive backs and cornerbacks who are going to be in place. And, I think there's definitely some intrigue there. But I think overall defense is going to continue to be a strength for this team.
So what do you think the prognosis is for the season, an improvement on 7-6?
Wow, that's a tough question. And I say that, here's what I'll say, okay? Tulane is going to be a better team this year than in 2018. Does that mean they win more than 7 games? That's a question. And I'm kind of putting them around that 7 to 8 win mark. That to me would be a really strong season when you look at the out-of-conference schedule, which has FIU, who, despite all the grief that people try to give UCF, FIU is a very solid program right now. Tulane is going to travel to Auburn and Army, who both might be ranked. And then they'll also be on the road this year to play Memphis and a couple other tough games in the AAC. So tough schedule, one of the toughest schedules in the AAC. But yeah, I do think Tulane can get the thing done again and sustain what we saw last year. That's certainly what we hope.
And I've been asking everybody that comes on the podcast to give their prediction who will be the AAC champion this season. Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I don't think you can pass on UCF at this point. Phil Steele, I mentioned he came on. We were kind of debating this out. He really likes Memphis because of the I'll just kind of make an argument for Memphis. He really likes Memphis because of the way their schedule playing out much easier than a lot in the league. I still like what UCF brings back. Now, if I had to pick a dark horse team who is not my homer team of Tulane, I think some people are sleeping on Houston. I mean, I know that they ended badly when you consider that they had a lot of their defensive line out by the time that they got just absolutely railroaded by Army. But, King coming back to quarterback, with Milton being hurt, that is the bona fide best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. And, I mean, he really, watching him last year specifically, he has it, not just against Tulane. I mean, he's the guy who, they'll go play USF, and it'll look like USF's finally going to get it done. And they'll have like a 4th and 27, and King steps up and gets it done every time. I mean, he really does bring something to the table. So I think that this year is going to be, I think there's a stronger set of teams at the top. I think Cincinnati obviously is another a lot of people are talking about. I'm looking to the hot hand a little bit. Well,
I tell you what, it does speak to the conference how much it's improving and how it has become separated from the rest of the G5. That is definitely for sure. So, JP, tell the folks about Fear the Wave and all the content that you provide and social media and whatnot.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, for anyone who's an AAC fan and wants to see what's going on in the league, I think there's a lot of really great blogs and stuff out there for the different teams. You can find ours at Fear the Wave blog on Twitter and also on Facebook. And we also have a podcast, Fear the Wave Cast, in case anyone wants to check it out. So very much appreciate your time and having us back on.
No problem, JP. Thank you for giving us the preview of the Tulane Green Wave for 2019.
Have a good one, Jeff. See ya.
And now we'll take a look at the Tulsa Golden Hurricane for the 2019 season. Dekota Gregory from the Tulsa World is the beat writer for them, and he's going to join us now to do that preview. Dekota, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Tulsa now coming into their 5th year under head coach Philip Montgomery, a 3-9 overall season. A year ago, 2-6 in conference. Is this a pivotal year for him?
I mean, even the players have kind of said how, if they have another 2-win, 3-win season, then that kind of becomes the culture at TU, and you don't want to be the coach that has that culture. And so not only is that aspect, but as well as, it looks like Zach Smith is going to start at quarterback. And that's kind of his guy. He came from Baylor, where Montgomery was, and he's a guy that Montgomery kind of found. He was the diamond in the rough that Montgomery found when he was at Baylor and recruited him to Baylor. And so now, you're struggling. You get to put your guy in at quarterback, not to mention the recruits you have are now, your core group. So, yeah, it's a big year for Montgomery.
And how will the protection work for him? The offensive line was a bit of a struggle last season.
Yeah, I mean, they have 2 returning starters, so that's definitely a question mark. That's something where it's hard to say if it's good or bad because you don't really know yet because, I mean, you're refilling over half of it. They have they're replacing Willie Wright, who's competing for a roster spot with the Cleveland Browns now. And, not only his time on the field, but he's a leader. He's still a guy who, when he was, down from Cleveland, he's still in the locker room. He's still a leader. So that's big shoes to fill, not only on the field and his talent, but the leadership you brought. And so Chris Ivey Jr. is one of those guys. He's the only senior among the lineman group, or among the offensive line. So he has big shoes. He's, attempting to fill those shoes that Willie Wright left, but that's definitely a question mark for sure.
He does at least have some help in the running game. Got a couple of good running backs there to support him.
Yeah. I mean, you have 2 guys in the Doak Walker Award that are the watch list for preseason, and that doesn't happen very often. Now, I can't tell you the exact number of schools that has 2 on the list going into the season, but I guarantee you it's not very many. But they both kind of bring their own kind of their special asset they bring with Shamari Brooks is going to be one. He's going to shake tackles. He's going to beat you with the speed. And Corey Taylor's he's going to try to run you over, and he's going to be more of a short yardage goal line type of guy. So they go with each other nicely. They're both Tulsa guys, so they're well supported from the fan base. So those will definitely be the 2, especially with a quarterback battle going and not set. Who knows if it's going to be set by the season, and they may switch in and out. So you definitely need those 2 guys to rely on.
Well, if they can get some improvement on offense, they will be in most games on defense. 9 returning starters, so they should be able to hold their own.
Definitely the starters, or the defense is definitely where they're getting most of their experience from. I mentioned in my story today of how on the TU media seniors on the front and the back cover, and there's only 2 offensive guys. So other than the 2 offensive guys and a punter, they're all on defense. So that shows you how strong and how all of their experience is on that side of the ball.
And the strength of that defense is the secondary, correct?
Yes, correct. I mean, you got guys like Manny Bunch is probably one of my favorite guys to watch at practice. He's flying around. He's a leader. He brings that energy and that intensity. But they're also, they got guys like Cooper Edmiston and Travis Gibson, that they're going to put pressure on the quarterback. Travis is he went to Von Miller's camp over the off season to it was a pass rusher, more technique, and that if you're going to learn about pass rushing, that's the guy to learn it from. So they also have some guys, not just in the secondary, but on the line that can give you some pressure.
And so when you put it all together, do you think Tulsa's going to make that improvement and start an upward trend in 2019?
Well, I don't think they can do worse.
Well, they could be They could be UConn, right? So they could be worse.
they did lose UConn. I think it's. I don't think of the 3 teams they beat last year, I don't think any of them are on their schedule this year, and they have a very tough schedule. They start at Michigan State. They come home to play Oklahoma State, and I don't know if you know much about the Oklahoma area or OSU fans and Tulsa fans in Tulsa. So that stadium is going to be not much of a home field advantage for TU. But I would think they still get more than 3 wins. I think they have more experience. No matter who they start at quarterback, they're going to have Seth Boomer, Zach Smith both have more experience than they had coming last year. They had 2 returning running backs. Like we mentioned earlier, the offensive line could be an issue. So I think if they're solid and
you know the defense is going to be that's at least your reliable option. So I think they can for sure pull 3 wins, especially since they know how much pressure is on not only them and their coach after last season.
You mentioned Oklahoma State coming in. How important was it to get a series going with Oklahoma State?
But yeah, that's very important. They started it. They played, I know for sure, a couple years ago. I can't remember if they played last year or not. But I think it's big, especially for recruiting rise. I mean, those are local guys who you're competing against. You know, there's maybe some under-the-radar guys nationally that you think you can kind of sneak away with locally, but you're always competing for OSU or OU. You know, all the big-time recruits around Oklahoma want to go to OSU or OU. And so if you could even, you know, manage to pull off a win against one of those two, then that's pretty big time for you. But off the field, ticket-wise, even though you may not be selling as many tickets to your own fans, that could be, you know, H.A. Chapman could be the fullest it is during the season, during that game, because of who it is. And, you know, this is a program that struggles to put fans in the seats and struggles financially as well, so that's a big help.
Well, Dakota, one of the things I'm asking all the guys who come in to do team previews is who they think will win the American this season. Who do you like?
I think I'm going to go with UCF just based on until they prove me wrong. That's who you got to go with.
And do you see anybody giving them a run at all? Do you see Cincinnati making it tough for them? Do you see Memphis coming out of the West?
I mean, you always have Houston, too, at the sneaky.
Yep.
You never know what Ogerson's going to do there. I mean, you don't really know. They're not only a talented team, but now that you got Dana there, you never know what they're going to be. I think that's definitely a really dangerous team, and which they have OU right off the bat. So they'll get tested early, and we'll see how good they are, but that's definitely a dangerous team for UCF.
All right, well, Dekota Gregory from the Tulsa World, we appreciate you taking time to give us a lowdown on the Golden Hurricane for 2019.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And as mentioned, Tulsa has that series with Oklahoma State. They signed an 8-year home-and-home that starts in 2024, on top of already what they're already doing. So in 11 of the next 13 seasons, Tulsa and Oklahoma State will play on the gridiron. We'll conclude our team-by-team previews next week with Temple, Cincinnati, and South Florida. And as always, please, I invite you to follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88. And once again, thank you for listening to the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.